We're live! Hopefully you guys can hear me. Please let me know in the comments if you can. I wanted to put a photo up of the bracket that I made for the, you guys can take a look at the thumbnail hopefully. I want to take a look at the bracket. In fact, I have the other piece as well. I'll grab that right here. So I have I came down to West Tech and I was working on the LS and I made the mounting bracket so that I could run the AMR, the little eBay AMR 500 blower. And I found a way to attach that to the LS and do it so that I don't have to completely redesign everything. I wanted to make a cheap and easy thing, and it just with the stuff that I had laying around, or more likely the stuff that West Tech had laying around. And so because they have lots of tools there, a mill and saws and drill presses and welders and everything, so I was able to whip something up and make a mount for it. And then I was also able to, if you guys take a look, meeting, I'm lost. Let's see. So I was also able to make this. So you can see I painted it fancy black. So this is the adapter that will bolt on. This one could be and they're really the same. The flange is a little bit different, but an inlet and an outlet. You can see I just repurposed that's an exhaust flange. You can see that's a flare for an exhaust. The piece that we had laying around, just cut it, made this plate, welded it on there. And this will bolt onto the blower so that we can see what happens when the composite pieces that came with that supercharger are really small. This one is I think that's a 2 1/4, and then I think I'm actually on the inlet side. I'm going to go up to a 2 1/2. I think it's a little bit big for the, it's a square opening, so I'm not going to pinch it and weld it and do all kinds of stuff to make it like a perfect kind of entry. I'm just going for, hey, this is bigger than that one. That one's, I'm sure, going to be very restrictive. So hopefully we'll be able to run it. And you can see in the thumbnail photo that I repurposed also one of the idler assemblies that Tom Demuse from Demuse Engineering, the guy that did the adapter deal that we did to put the forward blower on the LS, one of his alternator adapters. And so I was able to use that, just use the idler assembly and just make a bracket for the idler assembly to help tension the belt. I've got a 4-rib belt because the AMR blower has a 4-rib pulley on it. You probably could change that. I need to take the nut off there and see, but I didn't see a keyway. It might have one back behind the nut. I'll have to check that out. I think there are guys online that make the 6-rib pulleys for them, and so if we really wanted to get after one of these and found that the belt was slipping, that we could probably put a 6-rib on it. Although we're still talking about not very much power, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with running the LS and using this. So what I've done is, after doing this piece, I thought, oh, this would be good. That's a maximum amount of flow. We'll get lots of flow. But then I realized, hey, I've got to take this this piece right here. You can see with the flared entry, I've got to now adapt this to the air turbine. And so we've got to step it up to about 5 inches. So that one actually is not going to work very well. But I found another one from the remote turbo exhaust that I did that stepped up from a 2 1/2 inch to a 3-inch V-band, and then we have another V-band section for the exhaust over on the chassis dyno side that goes from 3-inch up to 5-inch, and then we can put the air hat right on top of that, and we just need to tape it and seal it, and away we go. So I'm just going to make another one of those flanges tomorrow, the little 4-bolt flange that bolts to the blower, and I'll weld the 2 1/2 inch tube like I did on this one, and then we'll have the V-band on it, and then all of that will be more than enough flow for this little supercharger, and then we'll be able to use the air turbine, because we want to use the bigger one. The smaller air turbine only goes to 200 CFM. I'm pretty sure that this is going to exceed that. So probably by 50% or more, I'm thinking. So but we'll see. It'll be interesting to see. I'm hoping that everything stays together and that it doesn't pitch the belt and all of that, because I used a a big long section of rectangular tubing as my straight edge to line up the pulleys. And so, but you don't know until you start it and run it, and then you don't know even after that until you've actually run some engine speed on this thing to find out when, you know, what's going on with the belt. Usually it's all good, everything's fine, and then it's not. All of a sudden, either it's slipping or it's launching belts. And so this isn't a dedicated thing. This is, or I should say, this is a dedicated thing. There's nothing else on the motor. There's only the blower, and then the crank pulley will run an electric water pump. I went to my storage this morning and picked up the alternator and power steering bracket because I thought I held the blower up on my truck, and I'm like, that looks like it will kind of bolt into where the alternator is. But it turns out it won't. The mounting brackets for the AMR blower, whatever this thing bolts to, are weird. Two of them are offset. One of them is not offset. Both of them are threaded. Only one side of each one of the mounts, and there's essentially four of them. There's two on one side and two on the other. But only one side of the flange is machined. The other side's not. It's cast and it's tapered, and you can't mount anything to that. We can't use that because it's not squared. It's not like perpendicular to the blower. So when you try to do that, it just cocks the blower at a weird angle. It's certainly an angle that's going to pitch the belt. So you can't do that. So this has weird mounting ears on it, and we just had to work around that. And so what I ended up doing is, and you can see that, you should be able to see that in the thumbnail, but I ended up not using the ears like the ones that you use to mount an alternator, for instance, on this AMR blower. I use the flanges for the inlets and outlets, the 4-bolt flanges. And so I just mounted this to a big section of steel L-angle that's pretty good size, so it's enough to mount the blower. And then all I had to do was basically position the blower out, line up the pulleys, you know, get the thing so that the belt was kind of tensioned. I went down and got a belt to find out, hey, where are we at? We need something that's like 48.5 inches or so. They had 48 and an eighth or 48 and a quarter. But the next step from there was 49.5. I'm like, well, that's going to be too much. But it ends up working okay. So we got enough. Where I mounted the blower, we had fairly good tension on the belt. And then I mounted I used another piece of L-angle with a hole in it to mount the idler. And now the idler can tension the belt. And then I can also move the idler. I'm going to have multiple. Right now I only have one, but I have another position to mount another hole on the mount for the tensioner, and then I can just move that, and as I move that, it adds tension to the belt. The other thing I could do is I can move it, I can drill other holes on the mount, and then I can slide the whole mount if I have to. I could just drill 2 more holes and then remount it. And so that would allow me to get more tension on the belt. I don't think we're going to have too much of a problem, I'm hoping, so it should work out pretty well. Tomorrow I'm going to be running a Pontiac, a stroker Pontiac, so maybe I'll do something on that. And then I start doing LS stuff. So I've got a ported fast intake manifold and a set of trick flow heads I'm going to run on one. I'm going to run the L86 and do the DOD and a cam upgrade on that. And so you can, you know, I should have like plenty of data to talk about. And I even did a kind of a quickie thing today. There was a customer there at West Tech, and Brule did a test on a vacuum pump on this particular motor, and it actually showed a pretty good power gain. So I'm going to see if I can't figure out a way to include that in at least one of the big block tests or something. So that'll be good. So let's see what you guys got going on. I don't think I can do a poll here. Let's see. No. Top chat, live chat. So let's go to live chat. There we go. In your opinion, what's the best bang for the buck supercharger? On what? For an LS? I don't know. They're all fairly expensive, but the ones like Tom DeMuse has done, the ones that have adapters, and then you can put a blower that you can buy that's fairly cheap, like the GT500 stuff, that seems to be a fairly good way to go for, you know, reasonably low power, or reasonably, you know, a little bit of money. It's a pretty good bang for the buck. Vortec and Torque-Storm and all those guys have centrifugals that are fairly affordable. So it depends on what kind of blower. A turbo is probably the least expensive way to go. And as you can see, I'm at my buddy Sanchez's house. I'm down here at West Tech. So I'm going to do the live feed and then head back to the dyno and do some more work. What's in the picture? That's an old Mustang Illustrated deal with Mark Sanchez on the cover. They're doing some, I don't know, there's some, looks like suspension tech or something that they're doing. Mark's pretty famous, especially back then. Everybody's in the house. The making all the blower stuff took as always, it always takes longer to do than you had planned. I spent about 3 hours last night working on stuff, and basically what I did was I just wanted to mount the blower on the engine, and so I used straps of aluminum and drilled holes and stuff and just got it kind of in place to see what was going on. Yeah, Advanced Engineering West, he did a lot. He did a ton of stuff with Kaufman and stuff back in the day. I mean, he has a 460 in his Mustang, and it's an emissions legal one too, because he got it certified back in the day, which is kind of cool. And his is a 429, not a 460. He would get angry if I told him it was a 460. As far as forced induction goes, I think I prefer Supercharger over turbo. It's mostly on demand. Okay. The centrifugal superchargers, well, they will give you, they just don't give you what a roots blower does. When you step on the gas, there's going to be a little bit of boost there if you do it at low RPM, but they won't have a good boost charge until the top. Wah. In this, when I painted it, I just basically just covered up all the rust. And I think that this is like header paint or something. I was wanting just, black. Just so that it look okay. I could take it, have it chrome plated now. But at least I got to drill and saw and weld and grind, and I didn't use the mill though. I didn't have to mill anything. Having the big piece of L angle certainly made life easier. 66 Comet Caliente, nice. If you purely wanted to add torque to your O2 Chevy, to mine, the best way would be, the two best ways obviously would be boost or displacement. How much duration do 1.6 rockers add over 1.5? Not very much, only a degree or two. Richard, can you reduce back pressure from going by a second wastegate? I'm told that you can, but I haven't seen it. But I don't know of examples where you would want to reduce back pressure unless you were running some class specific turbo and you were getting to the limit of your hot side flow and you still had cold side flow available, and if you brought down the back pressure, it could help things. Every time I've seen it tested, when you try to open a second wastegate and try to bleed just the exhaust back pressure, you end up changing the boost pressure too. Doggies barking in the background, but not mine. I wish they were mine. I miss them already. But at least I'm down here getting the dyno test stuff. This has been mostly fabrication so far, but we'll be on the dyno soon. I'll be putting something on the dyno tonight, and then we'll be running it tomorrow. I think it's a stroker. I think it's like a 462-inch stroker Pontiac. It's got some Butler stuff on it. It looks pretty nice. It's got aluminum heads and stuff on it. So it should make decent power. It's not a all-out build, but it should be. I just want to get it running and have it work. I'm falling. .557 would, you can get a 557 with a 460 block. What would be good for more power? I don't know which GT28s you're talking about. There are any variable geometry turbos available for engines in the 350-inch displacement? In the big rig world, they are common. Yeah, for diesel stuff, right? The problem with variable geometry stuff is it's hard to keep it working properly. What's considered too much back pressure? I don't know. It depends on a lot of things. You can have no back pressure. You can have less back pressure than boost pressure. You know, 1.5 to 1 to 2 to 1 kind of seems common for most applications. Short-term slapping a turbo on it, long-term restoration, nice. I don't know that I would go, Eric, I don't know that I would go down to 28s on a 4.6 liter. I think we were using, when we were doing twins on them, I think we were using 2 T3 46s on it. Would the weight of the vehicle or tire size change potential supercharger belt slip? I don't think that would unless you're changing the RPM that you're running it. I really don't understand the AMR supercharger. Does it replace the idler pulley? How does it hook up to the car? We're not doing it on a car. I'm just running it. In fact, I'm not even running boost on the motor. I'm just spinning the supercharger and then finding out how much airflow the supercharger can support. Like how much power can it support based on the airflow. So really what I've made is I have an LS engine on the dyno and I'm spinning the blower. I've made a blower dyno essentially. So I can read how much airflow is available from the supercharger, and then we'll run it at different RPM and different boost levels. You should do a reader's ride. Green screen or regular post. The guys from the live show could send you pictures and you could pick 10 to show. I can't do a green screen and change photos on the live feed unless I did it as a stream. But I do plan to go do videos with people locally. You don't really need a 7665. You should just put a GT45 on it. That'd be fun. I'd love to see people's builds. Yeah, I plan to do that. I want to go around locally to where I live and then talk to different people. That way I get to meet them too, which is kind of cool. So a 6-liter LS block with all forged internals, stage 4 cam with a full turbo kit for $3,700. That's dirt cheap. I don't mean the live feed. Oh yeah, we could do readers rides ones, and that's what I'll do. Is I'm going to be doing like full length videos that are 10 or 15 minutes or whatever, the normal kind of videos. Yeah, that's a good point, Burns. It's hard to have excessive back pressure that you would worry about unless you have unless you're trying to run a tiny disco potato on a 6-liter LS or something where it's just, totally mismatched for the application. You just want to have the right size turbo. That's what it's all about. You plan on revisiting the M90? The M90 is never going to do well on an LS. It's too small. But we could get it to where it actually made some boost on there, because we know that, and I know that other people are going to chime in about M90s, but the M90 that I'm talking about, the one from the 3800, is small and inefficient and would have to be modified fairly heavily to make any power. We've already made, I think we made 450 or something with one. And so unless we put it on a 300 horsepower motor, it's not really going to make much boost, and it's not really going to improve the motor very much. And since even a stock 4.8 makes more than 300 horsepower, if we put that supercharger and spun it really fast on a stock 4.8 liter, we could see some boost, but running 2 of them would be the way to go. I have a 7665 on my 5.3. I do have a couple of those blowers, so you can that would be the way to go, is to run 2 of them. It would be much better. Then you have twice as much to play with. Then you have 2 400 horsepower superchargers. What's the longest length intake track you've seen for a small block Chevy? Probably one of the stack injections, I'm thinking. It would be rude not to do a twin supercharger deal. It seems like a lot of people want to see it. If I did it, it would only, it's it seems like I'm doing it just for views, and that's not really why I want to do things. But having 2 of them is still better. It's definitely better than 1. Definitely solves the problem. And do it for the science. Yeah. GT28s compared to GT45. I think they both will work. We could find other technical reasons for more views. Because it certainly wouldn't be something that I would recommend, but we don't always do things because they're logical and the thing that we would recommend. I kind of want to mount them upside down and then have them blow into the high ram or something. I don't know that the 290s would do anything more than a single Kenny Bell or something, or a Magnuson does. What would be a good size? Someone asked about a Gen 2 LT. So Ryan, if you're asking about turbo size, you just got to tell me how much power you want to make. Richard, how do you work out how much power it takes to run a supercharger? Well, the way that it's done on a blower dyno is the supercharger is spun at a given speed and with a given airflow, and by that I mean you regulate the outlet side of the blower for whatever boost you want to run. So let's say you want to run the supercharger at 15,000 RPM. You have your pulley, and it's driven by an engine. Like in the case of the guys at Kenny Bell, they run an LS engine that drives the supercharger. So the blower's mounted, and then they have a drive pulley ratio between the engine and the blower, and then they can also adjust blower pulleys to get the speed that they want. They run the engine at wide open throttle because it takes a lot of power to drive these things at a given engine speed. So let's say 6,000 RPM. So they're running the motor at 6,000 RPM. They're running it at wide open throttle. This is on a dyno. They're driving the blower. The blower is run at some blower speed depending on the drive ratio, and then it's regulated to some boost. So let's say it's running 15 pounds of boost at 15,000 RPM. The way that they have the blower dyno hooked up, they can measure airflow, they can measure temperature, and they also know what that motor does when they're running just the motor with no blower hooked up to it. They know how much power it makes. And so they know how much power was being consumed when it's driving the blower. So you can tell how much power it takes to drive the supercharger at that combination of blower speed and airflow and boost level. Because then you could change all of those things. And then you change the parasitic loss associated with driving that supercharger if you spin it faster, higher boost, different things. And they have lots and lots of data. At least Kenny Bell does. I don't know of other people that have done that, but I'm sure that they have. And that's how you do it. And that's how I'm going to do this one. We're going to drive the little AMR blower with a LS motor, and we know what the power output is the LS motor. So if we make a run with the LS motor and run it from 3,000 to 6,500, we know what the power curve does, and it repeats every time. So we hook the blower up and spin the blower at some speed and some airflow, and then we go, hey, look, it's making 10 pounds less, or it's making 10 horsepower less. Okay, we know that it took 10 horsepower to drive the supercharger. That, in a nutshell, is how it's done. Side mount to a common plenum with an intercooler. Yeah, we could TP them or whatever. Some did twin 90s on a Corvair motor. I think you'd only need one on a Corvair motor. Richard, the GT28s he's talking about are the disco potatoes, just different exhaust housings. Yeah, I would run like 3076s. I venture to say a large majority of viewers could afford a junkyard, couple of junkyard M90s and scrap metal rather than a Kenny Bell. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that those aren't comparable, but yeah. But I don't know that guys would be more apt to do that themselves. I think the number of people that would build a dual blower setup would be a very small handful. My hands in the way of the camera. I'm just trying to keep the chats on there so they can read those. Second shift, you want to bump up your van motor and LQ4. You can put different heads on it. Any of the other factory heads would help with compression and power. You could put a cam in it. You could do long tube headers. You could do a tune. Can you run a carb through an M90? I don't know. I haven't tried it. I thought I remember seeing that on YouTube that a guy did. Ever test an Edelbrock EFI manifold like a ProFlow 4XT, the tunnel ram style? Are they better than the throttle body injection? I don't like throttle body injection on any kind of manifold. I'm running that tomorrow, in fact, on a Pontiac. But I have tested the ProFlow tunnel ram style manifolds on the LS, and that video is up on the big intake test. And it makes the ProFlow tunnel ram style manifold on an LS makes the same power as a high ram does. Carburetor through the M90 would definitely be cool. Oh, and I forgot about that. I made my list of stuff. What about converting a turbo to a belt drive? I don't think that would be a good idea. That would be way more trouble than it's worth. And you should just get a centrifugal supercharger, because that's essentially what that is. And the turbo is way better if you drive it with exhaust. Because much like a centrifugal supercharger, it's not going to have immediate boost response, and you're not going to be able to drive it at the speed that its turbo impeller needs to run. We ran water methanol through the M90 on the 3800 testing. What about modern style TBI that missed over the blades like Holly Snapers? I don't like any of the 4-hole throttle bodies. It doesn't matter whether the injector's on top of the blades, below the blades, on sideways to the blades. Problem draw through on a boosted application is the fuel can puddle in spots in the supercharger. Yeah, I mean, you know, 871s and 671s and all those seem to work pretty well. I don't know about drawing it in through the throttle body area, but, you know, I think it would work. I'm gonna try to run an elbow in front of the truck intake manifold on an LS too, and see if we can make a carburetor work there. Just, you know, again, it would be like a dual M90. Does it even work? It seems like I'm already running out of time, because I wanted to run a draw through carburetor, a draw through turbo setup too on the LS, but I don't know if that's going to happen. I have all these grand plans, and then anyone familiar with the Pontiac Royal Bobcat? I don't know exactly what they did. I recognize the name. And it would work. I'm not worried about seals on an M90, because for what we're doing on the engine dyno, it's not very long. Twin GT30s are better for 500 to 600 horsepower. Twin disco potatoes would do 500, but 600, I think you're maybe going out of the range. And the thing that would be nice on a roots blower like that, it's going to displace some of the air, so maybe that would hurt flow through the blower, but it would definitely help with charge cooling, especially on that 3800 where there's no intercooler on them. And we ran an intercooler that I was able to borrow from, is it JPL, I think? He was nice enough to send that out there. It was 69,912. My family almost bought one of those. I remember riding in one of those. I'm like, they put a 4-cylinder in a Porsche? They did. In a 911 style Porsche. John's out. Good to see you, man. So I was out racing around. Womp. And I'm racing. Is draw through better than blow through? No, I don't think it is. A blow through, I think, is better. Julius, but what M90 are they using on that Aussie Speed stuff? It's not the. Is it the blower from the 3800? That has a unique mounting pattern, because I remember making the adapter to mount a Kenny Bell in place of that. You're gonna run the elbow you showed the other day? No, that's a 2-barrel one. It's a 4412. He still has that. If I do it, I'm gonna make my own, and we'll put a 4-barrel on it. My buddies gave me a Super Richie doll. Yeah, you need to send me a picture of it. Are you sticking pins in it and stuff like some people do? Like the people that I get comments from? The GM 3800 also use older kits. Okay. You're putting an LS in a RAV4? That'll be good. Is it all-wheel drive? Is the RAV4 that was it 4-wheel drive, and is it continuing to be 4-wheel drive? The leaf blower thing, I did way back. I didn't do it, actually. The guys at the show shop had a customer that did it, and he did an electric one on an SHO Taurus, and we told them we don't think it's going to make much boost or much power. It made a little bit down low, but it just didn't have enough airflow. Yeah, Admiral, see? Super Richie AMR blower airflow adapter. Probably very easy for somebody to 3D print that. But that's okay. It's easy to build. I did find out, well, I was transferring the bolt pattern from the, to make this on the, that's kind of weird. To make this for the AMR blower, I was transferring this pattern from the other one, from the other inlet, and I found out that there's a lot of slop in that inlet, a lot in the bolt pattern, and it didn't transfer over very well. I had to oversize some of the holes in this because of that. Sell those made in Elbonia. I think Jim Belushi's from there. Yeah, I have my fingers crossed on that. I just don't think that that's going to work, but we'll see. Anyone run a turbo on a 2-stroke on a VVT? I don't know what that. $650 CFM. Yeah, but it doesn't make any pressure, though, is the problem. And they don't flow that. They may free flow that, but it doesn't. That doesn't mean it'll support that when you hook it to a motor. But they certainly have higher flow ones that they did now than they did when I was there at the show shop when the guy was doing that test. It wasn't very. It was a plug-in one, so it ran on 110. Is 18 degrees too much timing? Does it detonate? Does it rattle? And the 7 pounds, 10-to-1 compression. I don't know what your cam is. I don't know what your air intake is. I don't know anything about your combustion chamber design. There's a lot of stuff there that I don't know. And 18 degrees on what octane pump is it? Is it 91? Is it 93? And do you have 18 at the horsepower peak? Do you have 18 at a torque peak? Do you have it below the torque peak? Cross your fingers for a CFM comparison. Reloading that's not going to happen on this trip. I won't be running multiple engines to get airflow numbers. Yeah, lots of questions. I need to ask Relay when was the last time they actually ran an airhead on something. I need to look and see. I know that when I took one of the airheads out, the calibration tag was from 2002. Might still be good, but have you ever thought about boosting an LS LT hybrid? I just want to boost an LT motor, an L83 specifically. I don't care about doing a hybrid. I don't think that that's really a viable thing. I know that Brian did cams for the running the Gen 5 stuff on the Gen 4 motor, but I just don't really know why anybody would do that. They are good, but there's just a lot of good LS heads available too, including porting the factory ones. But I do want to do that because I'm curious about that. The answer is going to be it's going to be a function of the brake specific air consumption number of the two motors. Is one of them more efficient at making power based on that airflow? So it may or may not be. I know that you're looking for it to be a different airflow at different engine speeds, but there's another variable in there. So it'll be more than just what RPM it happens. Did the L83 come with direct injection? Yes. Same, it's just a smaller version of the L86 and the LT1. But oddly enough, in which I don't know why they did this, but it comes with the least amount of piston to valve clearance of the LT family. Not that I think you'd want to use a really big camshaft in a 5.3 liter anyway, but it's just nice to be able to do it. And it's not hard to, you don't even really need a valve notcher to take away where the interference is. And I think Brian's done videos on that, so that then you could get crazy with your camshafts. I have a friend put a 3500 alloy V8 into his MGB. Does an MGB have a strong enough chassis for that? Figurehead gaskets, yeah. 100, 200 thousands. Go all John Kazi on it. Does the cooling of direct injection? You don't actually have cooling from direct injection because it doesn't inject it until it goes into the combustion chamber. So it doesn't have charge cooling the way that port injection does. MGB GT, ooh, yeah. Not the convertible one. Do you have any videos up on a Gen 2 LT1? Yes, I do. And also the L99, which is the 4.3 liter version of that motor. So you want to, somebody mentioned something about a rotary valve. Is it a rotary valve two-stroke? So port injection will make less power than a carb. You can see the videos I have up comparing that. If you ran port injection versus a carburetor on the same manifold, typically port injection makes less than a carburetor does. Direct injection does not make less than port injection, and before I tell you why, I want you to think about why that would happen. DI sucks for tuners. Old school rules. The new stuff makes good power. Nothing wrong with, there's nothing wrong with liking what you like. But you can like it all. It can all be good. No, direct injection doesn't make less power than a carburetor. It's getting better. Tech is catching up. Yeah. The thing that helps direct injection make power is that you are not injecting fuel into the airstream, which you would think, hey, look, that doesn't cool. That there's no charge cooling from that. That's right. But it also doesn't displace the airflow. So what you have is a direct injected cylinder head flows more than a non-direct injected cylinder head, a port injected cylinder head, because you're not flowing the fuel too. You're not wet flowing the cylinder head. So if you're just flowing air and the two heads flow the same, the direct injection head makes more power because it's just flowing air, and it will ultimately flow more. That has, you know, that doesn't even mention the fact that with direct injection we can run lots more compression and that kind of thing. DI has cooling effect in the cylinder where port injection hits the hot valve. Direct injection, most of the fuel on the intake stroke unless it's wide open throttle. I have a 403 with LS3 head, 600 plus a lift cam, I'm assuming. Um, 403 LS Gen 4 with LS3 heads. Are they ported? Are your heads ported? Your 600 lift cam tells me nothing about the camshaft. I don't know what intake manifold you have. So there's a lot of questions there. Does a carb respond to load better than fuel injection, like turning on the AC? No. Theoretically, combining direct injection with a TBI system would give the best of many worlds. No, it would negate the gains from the direct injection because you would be introducing fuel into the airstream, which would take up the airflow. 94 pump gas, 18 at peak, 20 at max torque. You have more timing at your torque peak than you do at your horsepower peak. You need to not do that. You need to have less timing at your torque peak. You need to have more timing at your horsepower peak, and you need to have less timing below torque peak under boost. Chevy did DI and port injection to get the most out of the combination. Chevy did DI and port injection to clean the valves on the LT5 motor. Richard, do you have plans on doing the chili bomb testing? I do want to do that. I just don't have something to run that on right now because I need something that's going to be sized for that. The fuel is expanding on the way to the valve, which displaces air. Admiral, I don't know about 45 millimeter gates. I've never tried 2 of those. I would think that that would be enough for those turbos. I would think. As long as they're positioned properly in the direction of the exhaust flow, that helps with them. That was backward. That makes more sense. It will be mounted intelligently. That's good. That and Burns mentioned one of the downsides to direct injection, and that is that it's harder and more expensive to get lots of fuel flow to it. I mean, you have a limited amount of time for one thing. You're working with very high pressures. You're working with very expensive injectors, and you have to have a pump. You have to have injectors. You have to have lobes on the cam, and you're just limited unless it gets very, very expensive, which is why people either convert over to port injection or they use both of them. So they supplement it. So you want to have a carburetor out in the middle of nowhere? So I wonder, it's true that some people, and you obviously feel more confident fixing a carbureted combination. But I think my argument would be that with a modern fuel-injected motor, you'd be much less likely to break down in the first place. I mean, short of a sort of EMP or something. If I increase the 302 to 331, well, you just multiply it. The easy way to do it is to multiply it by your specific output. So are you making 1 horsepower per cubic inch with your 302 and you go up to a 331, then you go up the same amount that you've changed displacement, because if you're making 1 horsepower per cubic inch. But if you're making more than that, then the gain that you get could be more than that. And more than likely, the torque amount that you get is going to be more than that. When Thule tested port injection on DI, here's they lost a big chunk of power. Yeah, he said, Brian said that the direct injection made more power. Internally wastegated GT35s have 28 millimeter gates. Internally wastegated stuff is not going to be enough. You might be able to port the openings of the internal gates. Andy, a 331 is definitely going to make more torque than the 302. It's going to be a better way to go. Or just put a 351 in. That's somebody with a 5-year-old BMW. No, that's one thing. I've had older BMWs, and if you have to go fix them, they're very expensive. But ask somebody that has a 5-year-old Honda or a 10 or a 20 or a 30-year-old Honda. $60mm pro mod size for wastegates. Not for a single. And I wouldn't go, the gentleman was asking about the 331. I wouldn't go 331 over a 347 because you hear about the side loading, or it doesn't last as long. It's bigger and it's going to make more power. It's going to have more torque. So my truck is 20 years old now. How do you feel about a 10-year-old Nissan? It would depend on which one it is and whether or not I knew something about it. Look what I do with 20-year-old LS motors from the wrecking yard. See, brand new cars break all the time. I would be really mad if I had a brand new car that broke. Two more minutes. I gotta get back to work. This is kind of work too, but the other kind of work. This kind of work. Whoa. 35-year-old Silverado, still awesome. Yeah, mine's not that old. Mine's only 20. Ask Chad. Chad's still driving my 94 VX. Well, I guess his. It's got, I don't know, 350. I need to look and see. I need to ask him if it has more mileage than my truck does. Yeah, sometimes engineers shouldn't be allowed to design things. And on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will be back tomorrow, and hopefully with some data on, well, probably the data that I would have tomorrow would be Pontiac related. And then the weekend we'll get some more LS stuff in the little AMR blower. But I'll see you guys all tomorrow.